Currently you do the job in the Unity as a Unity game developer or get the project from the clients to complete? I think that if we want to grab the freelancing project means what are the way to grab the project if someone is doing as an indie developer or someone is trying to do freelance? We start with the VR because it's not does not require lots of coding. It's just component based and it is the demand of the market currently. Means
Yeah.
hello everyone. Today we have a special guest on our podcast, Herlitz. Most of you know him for his contribution to Unity game development by his game development YouTube channel. I will request to Philip Herlitz to brief about himself so that most of you who don't know him can get aware about.
All right. Well, probably what people are most curious about is how I started the whole game development journey. I've always been one that's kind of able to learn things, but not really master anything. I mean, I'm 38, I think. And it's just throughout my life, I've come up with new passions. As a kid, it was magic. Magic
Oh,
tricks. And I wanted to be a writer at one point. And then I wanted to be a teacher, but, I got stuck in the retail world and I actually really enjoyed the retail world for a long time. Because it was like a video game to me. How fast can I get things done? How good can I get it done? There were tasks, checked off the tasks as fast as I could. Really enjoyed it. Worked my way up to management, but that was just a horrible experience working in management. All the fun was gone. And they made you work so many hours past the time you were supposed to because they thought they could. But my passion at the time was still kind of teaching. I was doing a little bit of YouTube videos, but my brother actually offered me a temp gig. They just needed people who understood technology, were energetic, to teach and train for some call centers. And so I did that for 5-6 years. I just
oh,
worked from home and I just taught folks to teach and train for cable companies where they can work from home and they can answer customer service calls for a cable company. And then that came to a halt whenever the cable company took all their work overseas. So I was out of work for a little while, but then we got a new client working for Coach handbag company. But during this whole process of when I've been teaching, a lot of times the classes would have to take like little breakout groups and virtual sessions. Early in my call center days, my brother and I would record a YouTube channel doing reviews for the Oculus Go virtual reality headset.
okay.
And we would only review the multiplayer games. Our channel's called Go Bros Review. If anyone wants to check it out on YouTube, it's long dead, but it's out there. And so a lot of indie developers, because the Oculus Go, back then, it's not like what Oculus is now. The Quest 2, Quest 3.
So it was, I think, in a very early stage in Oculus Go before the Oculus Quest one.
Yeah, people because the Oculus Go, it was after the Rift, and it was when Oculus was like, we need a way to target people who don't have massive gaming PCs, and so like the Samsung Gear VR came out, and that's basically what the Oculus Go was, except it was already all put together. You didn't have to have a cell phone, put it in a headset. It was all in one. Well, since we were doing our YouTube channel, I would reach out to indie devs and talk to them all the time. We'd review their game. I said, hey, here's a good suggestion. Here's a good suggestion. And finally, one of them was just like, you should just make games yourself. If you have good ideas, you should make games. And I'm like, there's no way I could learn to code. I've tried learning languages. I'm really bad at, I was trying to learn Spanish for many years, could never do it, but I tried.
So did you have any technical degree regarding the computer science or game development?
Probably one thing that helped is I took one class back in school, which was like they called it
Okay.
Computer Science 101. So I understood like if then else, just the very bare bones of computer programming. That kind of probably gave me a little bit of a leg up. But my first game was a disc golf game. And anyone who's in game development knows your first game, there's always too much feature creep. I spent over a
Yeah.
month animating a bear, and it was not important to the game. I should have focused more on making the game fun, but
Okay.
I was animating a bear. But I tried coding, and it was really hard. I couldn't figure it out. And so then I discovered this asset on the Unity Asset Store. I think I got it on sale, called Playmaker.
Yeah.
And Playmaker is a visual scripting tool, for anyone who doesn't know, that it's all based on C#. But it works similar to the animator in Unity or even shader graph, where you have nodes that you connect together for your logic. With the Playmaker FSMs, they're functional state machines. So there's a state, and then you just you can keep going. You tie different states together. Then inside the states, there's actions. And this is probably what helped me learn C# because I do a lot of C# development now. I've actually developed integrations for Playmaker based on my knowledge of C#. But all those little actions, if you open them up in Visual Studio, are just mono behaviors written in C#.
And on the YouTube, your tutorials on the Playmaker is doing rocking stuff on the YouTube, because no one have done much more tutorial on the Playmaker.
And
so
probably
it's really great.
what helped me really get motivated to do that is I really wanted my game to be multiplayer because that's what I was passionate about. I was developing in the Oculus Go, which was a miserable experience because it has like no inputs. It was this little wand and had one button, but it was also a trackpad. Every game I ever developed every platform after the Oculus Go was just a breeze because handling inputs in the Oculus Go was just a nightmare. But yeah, in the Playmaker community, even though they had connections and actions set up to work with Photon Pun, every tutorial you found online, everybody stopped at the same spot. And nobody had a tutorial that would let you basically complete a multiplayer game. And so I dedicated a month. I'm like, I'm going to spend a month and I am going to learn everything there is about Photon Pun 2. Then that's when I started recording multiplayer tutorials for Pun 2 with Playmaker. And I found that there were some gaps, even though they had a package in the Playmaker ecosystem to help you set up Pun. There's a lot of important actions that were really missing to like help you set up a lobby system, doing the chat, voice chat even. There's a lot of pieces missing. And so I started creating those custom actions. And that might have been one of my first assets I listed on the Unity Assets store too. I made a Photon Pun 2 Playmaker integration, and I had demo scenes for 2D, 3D, and virtual reality.
Okay, I have seen that plugin, but I was not sure that plugin is created by you. So
yeah, I think there was another one out there too, but I'm not sure. But that one I just mentioned, I've actually deprecated because Photon essentially has deprecated Pun. No one should be using Pun anymore. If you're out there and using Pun, stop it. Go use Fusion. Pun is so old.
So why did you choose the Unity? Means there was Unreal and Unity. So is there any selection point, or you just heard about the Unity first?
I can't really remember why I started on Unity. Maybe some of the other developers I had spoken with when I was reviewing the Oculus Go were developing with Unity. Maybe it was just I had a really old, I did not have a very powerful machine. And Unreal, I feel like, was like even just the basic install was like really pushing graphics. I mean, that's a lot of people say about Unity. It's the pretty engine.
It's easy to go. Means in Unreal you have to install a very big package to just move further.
With Unity, it just seemed like, especially when I first started with, I think it was 2018, Unity 2018. I mean, you could tell just the itself just looked kind of not polished, but it didn't look ancient. It was just, this is a tool. Use this tool. That's what I liked about it. It seems straightforward, and my computer can handle it, and that's why I started with Unity.
Okay.
But transitioning from, now I'm developing full time essentially. Well, I'm only really working part-time hours because I have 4 kids and I can't ever find time. But it is essentially my job. It is my only source of income now. And how I transitioned from being a call center instructor to being able to do this for money, there was a lot of luck involved. But ultimately, one big piece of advice I can give a lot of people, I guess I can include it in my story. Let's take it in order. So Sebastian Rez, I don't actually know what his name, but like he's developed some Playmaker integrations too. I actually used his Playmaker integration for my VR project, and he's done some tutorials too for multiplayer with Playmaker. But he was actually working for a guy who was building an app that he was going to sell to museums for Greece, and they needed someone who understood multiplayer. So that was probably one of my first paid gigs, was just, hey, can you complete this? How much can you do it for? And it was just task by task. And then I discovered Upwork, where I did some gigs for some folks. When I really started getting, go ahead.
Yeah, so that was your starting in getting the projects and started working on the projects.
Yeah.
So currently means you do the job in the Unity as a Unity game developer, or just you get the project from the clients to complete?
I have a team that I work with that I've been working with for a year and a half now. No, not quite that long. Yeah, maybe. And I think in September or November, it might be 2 years I've been working with them. It's basically two guys that own a company. They were actually originally both artists. The one of them kind of leads the projects and does all the main art, and the other one, he taught himself Playmaker, so he's the developer of the team.
Okay.
And one day he reached out to me in Discord for some help with something, and I happily gave it to him. And then whenever he started talking to me, there was a guy that had actually been working 40 hours a week for developing a tool that he was selling to schools that we were building on. The originally demoed it on the Quest, but then we built to the Pico because he didn't want to deal with Oculus's licensing fees and stuff. So we were developing on the Pico. That whole project fell apart, which is an interesting story. And when it fell apart, I reached out to these guys. I'm like, hey, I have a lot of free time right now. Could you use me? And then they used me, and we love working together. And we've been working for 2 years. We hopefully will have the project we're working on now published in October, at least early days version of it. But it's all
Okay.
VR all the time, and we love it.
But I will appreciate that you are very active in your community. Means whenever someone drop a message to you on your general or personal message, you just reply as soon as possible. So it's
I
really
try. Yeah.
great thing about you. And
I appreciate that. I
yeah,
remember my early days of trying to learn. It's always really frustrating where there's this community, this Discord server where there's people there with the answers, and you can't move forward until one of them can help you. And while you're waiting for them, you don't even know where to look on the internet. I mean, Unity is very well
exactly.
documented, but it's documented in multiple places and is really documented for people who've been in the development world. Kind of a lot of developers I've talked to, I feel like they don't even read documentation. They just go to the API section and they just read everything that's possible in the APIs. Or in Visual Studio, they'll read the code in there and read the comments and figure things out. Yeah, I mean, I've been there. I had some really slow days where I was just waiting on some master in the Playmaker Discord to help guide me on where to go next. So yeah, I know the feelings of feeling stuck. So anytime I see somebody, I mean, I'm already at my computer most of the time anyways, because I work from home, I work from my computer. So if I see a message, I'll try to reply. And like if I'm waiting on a build or my computer to do something, I always toggle over the Playmaker Discord and see, is there anybody over there that needs some help? But usually now it's like Broken. He's in there and he's got some tutorials. What is it, like Little Owl Gaming, I think it is. And that guy is addicted to helping people. And that
Yeah,
sounds
yeah.
like a bad thing, but I mean, I feel like he's addicted to helping people because
Yeah, means it's really required a lots of time to just reply someone. Because and if someone get distracted, it is the story of most of developer. They got stuck, so they wait someone that if someone reply will, so this can solve their problem. So it's really a very great thing. And most of developers gone through that, but people just get forget. But someone uh, who have been in those situations, so they try to help others people. So if I'm asking that if we want to grab the freelancing project, means so what are the way to grab the project if someone is doing is an indie developer or someone is trying to do freelance?
like, what advice do I have somebody who's trying to like basically get into development gig or try to freelance doing it? The biggest thing is be somebody that someone will want to work with.
Okay.
Because they're in the project I was on that I was working 40 hours a week, it fell apart because the guy who was running it was like, all right, Phil, because we created a prototype. He's like, Phil, this is a great prototype. Let's take it to the next level. So he hired somebody to become the lead developer. And at this time, I had built the whole project in Playmaker. And he brought on 2 more developers, and they didn't know Playmaker. And they
Okay.
were most non-Playmaker developers are kind of scared of it. It's like, oh, what is this? There's too much, and they refuse to look at it. I'm like, oh, I'll learn C#, no problem. And that's probably what really pushed me to get really good at C#. I shouldn't say really good. I use C#. I'm not a master in it, but I basically had to start using C# because these guys wanted to use it. So all my Playmaker stuff, I converted to C#, and then we started doing stuff. But our lead dev, we didn't want to work with. He was never reachable. And he only worked like third shift. So whenever he worked, it was like in the middle of the night while the rest of us were sleeping. And he lived in the same country as us. So it's not like he was working overseas versus us. And that's probably actually how I got that gig originally wasn't even through any of my development channels. The guy saw me on YouTube reviewing the Oculus Go stuff. And he's like, hey, Philip, I really like your energy. I'm developing a VR app. Any chance you're also a VR developer? And I'm like, yeah, I am. So there's something to be said about being likable and fun to work with. That I almost say is more important than your skill level, because nobody wants to work with you. Even if you're the best developer in the world, no one wants to work with you if you're not fun to work with. That being said, you got to learn from criticisms. You got to learn from your teammates. But for people just getting started, they don't have teammates yet.
Yeah.
Or maybe they're still learning. And
And most of people don't have a YouTube channel. Basically, we have the channel, but
yeah.
they are just doing the LinkedIn stuff and trying to get their first job.
Yeah. So for skills, to learn skills and learn how to develop better and faster, I always tell people, especially if you're just getting started, no matter your skill level, go to itch.com, or is it itch.io? I can't remember. Go to itch and sign up for the Try Jam and do it every weekend. So what the Try Jam is, it's a game jam, and it's every single week, and it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And the goal is to build a game in the theme and style. I guess styles, it's usually just a theme. In the theme, and your goal is to only spend 3 hours on the project total. Now, if you have a team with more than one person, the goal would then be everybody on the team can spend up to 3 hours. The more people on your team, the better your project can be. But I encourage everybody, don't worry about a team starting out. If you're just trying to hone your skills, you're just trying to learn development, do the Try Jam, see what you can do in 3 hours. Because that changed my skill level so much.
Okay.
I did it 6 weeks in a row. And it's okay if you go over 3 hours because you still want to finish something, but the goal is to get to that 3 hour point. And it got to the point where I got so comfortable, I'm like, I wonder if I could do a multiplayer game in a Try Jam. So
And I think if you are passionate about anything to learn or to explore, so you will be do, like, it doesn't matter that you have some degree or you have, and this is Flip is a big example that he approved, because he's not coming from the very technical background, but he was curious to learn multiplayer stuff, creating the application. So I think you are the best example of it.
Thanks. The Try Jam, that's a great way to hone your skills and just get better. Don't turn down a job. A lot of my early gigs was stuff for crypto guys, like guys who wanted to make a game based around their NFTs or around a certain coin. And I'm like, yeah, I'll take anything. I'll do any job. And so there was a lot of, on Upwork at the time, there was a lot of people looking for people to develop for their crypto things, but no quote unquote real developer, established developer would take those jobs, because there was such a shady, unapproved, people look down on those types of things. But I worked with an amazing lady who, she had an NFT called Mintunes, I think. And we created a multiplayer kind of open world social environment called Mintopia. And it was all based on her NFT. And
so it was a VR application or a window?
It was a window. Actually, it was WebGL, because they would log in through their web browser. They could log in as a guest, but if they wanted like full access, they had to own one of the NFTs. It was a really cool little project.
And in the WebGL, I am now I think in this week I just heard about the Spatial IO. So means we can deploy our WebGL project in the Spatial IO. So it's also a very great platform to run on the browser.
Yeah. It's especially like for my first WebGL projects I was kind of struggling with, because Unity out of the box, it doesn't publish them very well. But they've gotten better with the later iterations of Unity. I think they have better templates now, but you can also find good templates online, WebGL templates. Or if you're a front-end developer, which I don't even know if that's the right word, but like a web developer and you're familiar with CSS, that's a great skill when it comes to WebGL development, because once you export your WebGL project from Unity, you can then edit the CSS files and the index and you can add overlays and all sorts of cool stuff to your project. Another idea I just had for people who are just starting in development: pursue VR, mixed reality, augmented reality, because that's where things are really going. And studios are really going to be looking for people with those skill sets. Plus, people ask me all the time, when it comes to VR, what's the best game engine to use? And I'm always screaming Unity, Unity, Unity for VR. And I've told people many times too that of all the different types of projects you can build, VR is actually the easiest because
Yeah.
of Unity. And it seems kind of mind-boggling that VR would be the easiest platform to build for, but it's because it's Unity. It's all based on like interactions with your controllers or interactions with your hands, but you're like grabbing the objects like you would in real life. And so it all just comes down to components you add onto an object to make it a grabbable, make it interactable. And you can build all sorts of wonderful experiences without writing a single line of code, just by knowing which correct components to add. Blizz Studio, another Playmaker user, made a great series on YouTube for basically how you can do a VR project without writing any code. I think by like the third or fourth episode, he starts doing some Playmaker logic. But you can do, if you're not building something that needs to keep track of any logic, if you just want an experience or you're an artist and you want people to be able to move around inside like your 3D masterpiece, you don't need to know any code. You can just go straight into Unity. You can just say, start from the VR template and then drop in your models, hit play, and you're done. And with the Apple Vision Pro coming out now,
Yeah.
and Quest 3, the pass-through on the Quest 3 is so good. The color pass-through on it. And people say the Pico 4 Pro's color pass-through is so good that more and more people are going to be using headsets for productivity, entertainment, gaming. People are wearing them on airplanes.
Training,
Yeah, training. The company I'm working
education.
for now, we haven't published any games, but a lot of their money comes from industry stuff. So there'll be some company that says, hey, we want to create a virtual training platform. So that's what they'll build and they'll start. And that's where they get the money to help fund and keep going with their game development stuff. So anybody getting started, if you don't know, should I make a 2D game, 3D game, VR? Get yourself a VR headset.
But if you are in the 2024, so you should be start with the VR, because it's not does not require lots of coding. It's just component based, and it is the demand of the market currently. Means there are lots of headset is coming, so it's a great. I think it's the most demanding skill in the market right now.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I pre-ordered. There's this company called Immersed VR, which has been around since we were doing reviews for the Oculus Go. And even on the Oculus Go, it was super cool. You could put on the Oculus Go headset, you could link up your laptop, and then you could play in multiplayer. So my brother and I could sit there in virtual reality, but we can also have our computer screens with us in virtual reality, and we could share our computer screens in virtual reality. So even though he was in Texas and I was in Pennsylvania, we were still able to be like we were in the same office environment. And
Okay.
they loved the VR space, but they wanted to make it better, right? Because it was really hard to wear a big bulky headsets, around and work, and you feel kind of separated from where you are. Like if you're working at home, you feel separated from everybody else. Sometimes that can be helpful, block out some distractions. But it could hurt your face a little bit if you're wearing this for more than a few hours. It could make your eyes tired. So they developed their own headset now, but it's not a headset. It's essentially thick sunglasses. And I wish I had my sunglasses because they're very similar to their model.
Okay.
But it's super lightweight pass-through experience. I think it's standalone even, but it can also be direct. Anyways, I'm excited for it. I've pre-ordered it. They've started releasing them, I think, this month. But that's real pass-through AR glasses are here, where you can see your computer screen, you can see virtual environments, stuff that you can wear like sunglasses.
Okay.
A lot of people think when they see people wearing these headsets, it's still very gimmicky and I
Exactly.
shouldn't start developing. But no, that's where the money is. That's where people are looking for developers now. Everybody go out there. If you're starting out, or even if you're already a developer, it's time to pivot to VR, MR, AR, because that's where
That's going to be a future.
market's heading. Also, like especially if you're building a game, yeah, if you're building a 2D platformer game, there's hundreds of millions of 2D platformer games out there. If you're building a
Exactly.
3D game, but with VR, there's every time I hear someone building another first-person shooter in VR, I'm like, I get it, it's easy, and you have essentially, you have a trigger and a gun in your hand. I get it. You want to make a gun shooting game, but they still are semi-successful, even though the VR market is flooded with them because there's still not that much out there.
Yeah,
Developers are
still
still
we are,
getting the currency.
if we are looking for some educational app or training app, so uh, still there are lots of gap inside the VR application. So I think there is a lots of scope in the VR, MR, and the MR. Basically, Meta is releasing SDKs, updating, like they have released the Meta MR SDK, and they have also released some new stuff. So every day means technology is changing, and day by day our headset is going to be a very smaller, and I think it will be a very easy to use in the future also.
Yeah, the game that we're
So
developing now is a remote control blimp game, and Meta's SDK is so good now that my blimp that I'm flying in my VR headset can run into my real world walls. Like if I'm flying in my kitchen, it'll hit my
okay.
kitchen wall and bounce off. That's how good Meta's APIs are right now. It's super immersive.
Yeah, and few feature I have seen that they have also just in if you will see in the Meta Quest 3 updated version, so they are almost like the Apple Vision Pro. You are able to create the multiple screens. You are able to go full immersive way. So it is means close to Apple Vision Pro in that cheap device.
And some people are like, well, I can't get into VR because I don't have enough money to get a headset. There's great simulators in Unity to where you can still develop even if you don't have a headset. Most of my days now, like I set up whenever we're building, I hate putting my headset on and off and on and off because I have a decent gaming laptop, but it's still 10 years old. And that waiting time of it initializing VR, so that's 15 seconds I want back every single time I hit play. You can develop games with a mouse and keyboard, especially with Unity's. Folks, if you're out there and you're developing with Unity and you're not using Unity's new input system, you're shooting yourself in the foot. Use Unity's new input system. It makes it so easy to build your game for VR, but you can also make it for flat screens. It just makes everything so easy. So if you're starting with Unity, definitely go with a new input system.
If someone is starting his career in the Unity, so what you will suggest him to do the job, or do to become the indie developer, or to do the freelancing project?
That's a tough question. I have a few answers. And I just thought about what I forgot. I was talking about cost of headsets. The Meta Quest 2 I see in my area on the Facebook Marketplace for only $100 because people are selling them so that they can get new ones or they just find themselves not using them. So, folks, if you want to get a VR, get a headset, check the secondhand marketplace. They're cheap. But if someone's getting into development, should they try to build something themselves? Should they try to find freelance jobs? Should they try to apply for studios? I have several answers. Some people just aren't in the position to try to build their own game because they need income now. If you're blessed like me, where you have a day job where there's a lot of downtime that you can learn and develop while you're still getting paid at another job, well, then by all means do that. If you're at a desk job that you wouldn't get in trouble for, while you're waiting for your next meeting, opening up Unity and starting to develop something, great. That's how I learned. I essentially got paid to learn while I was also teaching. There's some people who are just really good with their finances, and maybe they've been saving up for a few years. They have enough in their savings that they don't need income for a year.
Exactly.
That's more than enough, because if it's taking you more than a year to publish your first game, I don't think you made your scope small enough. One thing I keep telling the guys that I'm working with is that we need to bring our scope smaller and smaller, especially when it comes to VR. You don't need to have this massive game for people to be interested in it. It's just got to be fun. So find what they call that vertical slice. What's the most fun part of your game? Build it, publish it. A lot of people don't want to publish until they're done. I think that's dumb. Publish as soon as you have something playable. If you
I
want to make
think
it free,
it will help us to get the feedback also if we are going to publish.
yeah, because that's free feedback. If you see a bunch of people complaining about a certain feature, that was free feedback you just got. Because it's hard to get good feedback. It really is. And you might be spending like hundreds of hours on a feature that no one cares about. And you're not going to know if you sat on that feature for so long. Get it out there, get people playing. One of the things my team keeps talking about is we're going to release the smallest MVP, the most viable product we can think of, and we'll release it at a smaller price point. And then as we add features, we will either add them as DLCs where people can purchase to extend the app, or if it's not something that makes sense as a DLC, once we add more features, we'll say, okay, well, maybe our game is no longer a $5 game. Maybe it's a $10 game now. But the people who bought it at the start, well, they're blessed. They've essentially got more free content. I think that's the way to go now, especially with whether it's you're a small studio or you're an individual, is find something that's fun and publish. And if you get traction, you can keep building on it. You could, even if it's, or you can even use Kickstarter. If you already have something that people can see and play, you can use Kickstarter to then get more funding to continue developing for it. So, hey, did you love the demo of my game? Throw me some money so that I can keep developing it. Otherwise, I have to go get a job at McDonald's. The benefit of, if you, let's say you have a degree, which degrees don't really mean anything. Again, if you're not somebody that somebody wants to work with, plus the market is flooded. A guy I was working with on my previous team, really smart. I thought he was fun to work with. He had a master's degree in computer science. He's actually teaching now, teaching students how to do programming, but he had a hard time finding another development job. I got lucky because I'm in the Playmaker community and a Playmaker studio reached out. If you get a studio gig going that route, you might be able to find some really cool benefits. I know, like, if you were to get a job with Meta or even one of Meta's subsidiaries, you could get signing bonuses. You get amazing health insurance, which in America is an important thing because we don't have great healthcare. So going for a studio, an established studio, also their salary. A lot of things with when you're an indie dev, you're either charging by the hour or you're charging by the task, to where someone says, hey, I have this project. What will it cost me? And you do the numbers, say, okay, it'll cost $500. But next thing you know, you run into some bug that you couldn't solve, and it really cost you $3,000 in your time, but you already signed a contract with someone for $500. So studios, there might be benefits. Also, it might be a salary-based position, so you might be getting paid sometimes when you're not actually working because you haven't been given a task, and so you can work on your own side.
And also in a studio, we got the opportunity to work with the team because we get lots of team, like someone is working on the concept art, someone is working on the 3D models, texturing. So I think in initial stage, that will be helpful if someone want to learn stuff.
Also with a studio, you can add that to your resume. You can get your name in the credits, and that can really help. In some cases, there might even be residuals. I think some video game companies might do that, where you get residuals from sales. Another thought I had for indie devs, if you're ever contracting with somebody and they ask you, how much is this going to cost? Think about, how many hours is this going to take me to, how much per hour am I worth? What is my hourly rate? But then take the time you thought it would take you to finish that and triple it. That's going to be a closer number. Shoot, that's something I've done all the time. I can do it in 4 hours. No, 12. It's going to take 12 hours. That's what you bill.
Because it's really not easy to estimate a task. Means if you are thinking that it will take 3 hours, it may be you can complete in 1 hour, but sometimes it's take to 12 hours.
I'm a big Star Trek fan, and there's an episode of The Next Generation where I think it was Next Generation, where the captain asked the chief engineer, Geordi, how long is this going to take? I'll give it to you in 3 hours. And at the time, they had an engineer from the original series on, Scott, and he's like, why did you tell him you could do it in 3 hours? Because that's how long it'll take. No, you tell him it'll take 6 hours. And if you get it done in 3, you're a miracle worker. And that's the game development. But it's not that you're really going to be a miracle worker. It's you always, as a developer, underestimate your time, because you think this is a simple task. I've done it 100 times.
Okay.
But you're always going to run into some issue you didn't anticipate. So always triple the ask. That way you're not shooting yourself in the foot. Because it also leaves negotiating room. Like you might say, okay, this will take me 12 hours, multiply by your hourly wage, give it to the person. This is about more than we wanted. We were hoping to keep our budget under this amount. Then you do the math. Okay, well, maybe that's more like 8 hours. I think I can do it. And then it opens up negotiation when you're doing those contracts. I'm so glad I don't have to do contract gigs anymore, but that's the way to do it.
And if someone start first time any freelancing or getting contacted by any client, so become very hard. Means currently I'm in the India, you are in the US, so it become very difficult. Like client is asking that how much charge you ask per hour, or how much will cost for this task. So is there any means idea that how we can tell client that this will be our cost per hour?
It really just depends on the job. Because if they want to pay you per hour, well, then you have to give them what your hourly rate is. And when I first started, I was telling people that my hourly rate was $15 an hour because I'm a playmaker. I was a playmaker dev. I knew that there were some limitations with that, especially if I had to work with a team and I really wanted jobs, right? So anything that could pay me to learn more, I mean, that's a great way to start. But down the road from me, less like a mile away, I could go work at McDonald's for $15 an hour. So that's not my hourly wage anymore. But one thing I started doing is every new job you get, like if I'm working a job and someone was saying, "Hey, I have a job for you," I upped my hourly wage by $5 to that person. Because what was happening is I was accepting jobs, but I was running out of time. So in order to make it worth for me to spend even more time working for 2 or 3 contracts at a time, I would up my wage $5 an hour and say, okay, my hourly wage is now $5 more. You don't tell them you're increasing it. You just say, here's my hourly wage. And they
Okay.
take it or they leave it. And it's safe to do it because you're already working for somebody else. Yes, it's less, but you're already working for somebody else hourly. And it gives you that flexibility to slowly increase. But if you
You are
also
revealing
have,
the secret.
if you haven't increased your wage in 6 months, you need to reevaluate yourself, because if you haven't learned enough in 6 months to give yourself a pay raise, you're doing something wrong. So evaluate yourself, give yourself a pay raise. You know, and sometimes I'll do stuff with someone free because they're doing it for free. I was really just getting, I like working on something new over and over and over again, and I was getting bored in my day job project I'm working on now, because we're just working on some UI stuff, some UI rework, and I really wanted to publish. And I was getting down, I'm like, something else to work on. I was thinking about resurrecting some of my own projects that I had let die. And then someone reached out to me and they pitched me this really unique game. It was a 2D platform, which I never worked 2D, so I really wanted to do some 2D to kind of keep myself educated on it. And seemed like a cool dude. He's from Romania. So yeah, we've just working on that together too. During my free time, I'll, like, for a while I was working like maybe 30 minutes a week on it, but it was enough to kind of, because he had already fleshed out the whole game. He had spent months teaching himself C#, ChatGPT, writing some stuff for him, but his game was a little bit buggy and it got to the point where he couldn't debug it. We essentially started from scratch, but he and his wife have been doing the art. It looks really fun. And I've just been adding, because it's a very simple game, doesn't require a lot of logic. So I was able to just add stuff 30 minutes at a time every week. Last week, I was caught up on my day jobs. So I was able to spend many hours on the weekend, and it's just a lot of fun. So don't be afraid to turn down free gigs too, as long as it's
Yeah.
fun and it's going to educate you. But don't let somebody else profit from your work. That's
I have a question that nowadays AI is very popular. So in your development, do you use the AI thing like
oh
ChatGPT
yeah,
or some?
yeah. Because there's times, because I can write C# now. In the projects that we're working on, but the team I'm on, we are a playmaker team. So we want most of our logic to be playmaker. But sometimes it's like, okay, I can write an FSM, but it's going to be like 16 states all tied weird together, and it's going to create bugs and it's going to be hard to track. So I want to write a custom action. Now I could just pop up C# and I could just do it. Probably take me 15 minutes. Or I can open up ChatGPT and say, hey, I want to write a custom playmaker action. I want these input variables. This is my goal. It takes me 30 seconds to type it. It outputs it in less than a minute. I get it in the project. There's almost always 1 or 2 things I have to correct. Usually it has to do with tooltips, but there are always small things. But it saves me hours upon hours of work. So yeah, I will use ChatGPT, especially if you're already knowledgeable. Like, there's nothing wrong with using ChatGPT because it's just a time saver. Because a lot of times you're just telling ChatGPT exactly what the logic is, and it's just saving you from having to type if parentheses this variable not equal to shift enter bracket, and it just saves you so much time.
So how do you see the AI? Means it is a very common question that how you see the AI, that it is going to replace us, or it is just going to improve our productivity?
In our lifetime, I think we don't have to worry about as a developer being replaced by AI. It is definitely going to improve our productivity. It's getting to the point now, especially just this past couple weeks, someone released a game that was being completely rendered by AI and they were playing Doom, but it was no game engine and it was all being rendered through some image generating tool plus ChatGPT or something. And I mean, it's only like 20 frames per second, but we're getting to the point now. Like, even there's some VR apps that you can. I mean, Unity's got built-in AI stuff too that can generate meshes and stuff like that for you. So we're getting really close to the Star Trek world of the holodeck, really close. And we may even see a point. I'm sure we'll see it within the next 10 years where you can put a VR headset on and you can say, "Hey, Meta, take me to the beach." And it'll generate you a unique beach scene and you can just lay there and maybe there'll be things to interact with. That'll be there. The very, very rudimentary version of the Star Trek holodeck we will see easily within the next 10 years inside the headset. That being said, we'll always still need developers because AI is not going to be perfect. And AI can come up with some fun ideas, but I don't think it's going to be the point to where it'll be able to develop unique ideas that'll replace dev. Because even if it could, it's not going to do it on its own, right? It's not
Yeah,
going to be
yeah.
like, I now have sentience and I'm creating my own AI game studio. And it's going to go find other AIs to get together and build. I mean, somebody still has to, even if it can replace everything, someone say, I want to make a disc golf game. ChatGPT, let's make a disc golf game together. And it's still going to be someone's vision. If anything, it's going to let a lot of creative people who aren't developers and like artists and stuff come up with projects. So it's going to make a lot more competition because it's just going to be a lot easier for people to create things. But developers are always going to have a leg up because they're going to be able to debug things and fix things. Stuff that somebody who's just asking AI to do, AI is just not always right.
Yeah, he's helping us to just do the job very quick way. Okay, so what are the best means what are the Unity tools you like most, and what are the assets, your favorite assets that you use most probably?
Well, Playmaker is a great asset, even for
Yeah,
somebody
you are
who,
top guy in Playmaker.
yeah, even if you're a C# developer like me, if I'm doing multiplayer, I've tried some multiplayer titles where I'm like, I'm gonna do a completely raw C# project. And when it gets to the multiplayer part, I'm like, I want to see it. I want to see it. And the beauty of Playmaker is you can see your logic going step by step through these state machines. And another thing that's great about Playmaker is like in C#, you write a method called this is my method. And you can call it from
Yeah.
another piece of script saying, just typing it in and say doing it. But from inside Unity, unless in your script originally you wrote some sort of button interaction where you can call it from the inspector or something, there's not a real way to be like, I want to try calling this method again if I change this variable. But in Playmaker, you can change variables on the fly, disable, re-enable, see what happens. You can jump to different events by just alt-clicking on them, and you can jump to an event even if your logic wasn't transitioning you there at the time. But if you want to skip ahead, you can do that. And when it came to multiplayer, I'm always going back to I got to put Playmaker in here because I need to see what's going on with my multiplayer. Why does this networked player not know that my health is 80, but I'm saying my health is 80? I can go look over there and it's a lot easier. Another great tool, which I use in every project now, is called Components Rename Components. If you search the Unity Asset Store for components and name or rename components, it's basically a tool that lets you rename anything in the inspector. So
Okay.
let's say you have a game object, but it's got like 3 box colliders. What does each of those box colliders mean? So you can right click on it and you can rename that component and say, this is the head, this is the body. So it's a lot easier when your inspectors collapse knowing what things are. And for a Playmaker user, it helps a lot because in the inspector, if you have everything collapsed, you just see Playmaker FSM, Playmaker FSM, Playmaker FSM. You're like, well, which one is the one that controls movement? Click on them
Okay,
and you can
so
rename them
it
to
helps us
movement.
to identify.
Yes.
Okay.
Another great tool that's great for world building and a lot of other things. Like if you want to create some like essentially macros, and I've never used this tool for it, but I'm pretty sure it has the ability to where you can have a shortcut key and then Unity will do something for you automatically. It's this tool called Monkey Tools.
Okay.
It's a great tool for automating difficult tasks. And what I used Monkey Tools the most for was when I was doing that crypto game back in the day, Mintopia, and I wanted to place a bunch of trees. but like 3D meshes. I wasn't using the terrain builder. I wasn't building them in Blender. Like in Blender, you can like set up a bunch of nodes and auto generate trees. But I want to just be able to click and a tree was created in the editor. And so the Monkey Tools has the ability to generate or create object on click. And it gives you all sorts of settings. You can even create a pool of game objects. So let's say I have 4 different types of trees, randomize it between these trees. It gives you the option, do you want to randomize the rotation or you want the tree to always be standing straight up? And then you can just click wherever you want on your world and it'll create the tree. It was really nice to put some palm trees on a beach. So Monkey Tools is a great, besides like Photon Fusion for multiplayer, not really.
So in the multiplayer SDK, which one is your favorite one? Like which one you like most?
I've looked at, there was a game jam I was on where we used Unity netcode. And it's because I spent so much time learning Photon Fusion or Photon Pun. Photon Fusion is not much different. I have to go, anytime I'm building multiplayer, I have to use Photon. I would love to learn like Unity netcode because it's built into Unity. And I love having everything in one place. But I mean, even for things like leaderboards, Unity has leaderboards and stuff now, but because I'm comfortable, okay, well, there's another tool, Loot Locker. Loot Locker is a great tool for creating player accounts and handling leaderboards, cloud saves. Loot Locker is a great tool. I also made a Playmaker integration for it, but I'll use Loot Locker for leaderboards, saving player data and stuff like that. But Unity's offering a lot of that stuff now. You know, Unity's got its own multiplayer service, but Unity's just not very good at streamlining things. You'd think it's your game engine. Multiplayer should just work, right? You should just be able to say, I want this to be multiplayer, you know, and it should just work. But it just doesn't work that way. I mean, they have leaderboards, they have authentication, but it's none of it's very straightforward. And I'm just going to continue using what I'm comfortable with, I guess. I mean, things like Roblox Studio, you know, it's a game engine for Roblox, but it's built around multiplayer. So everything you create is essentially network synced automatically out of the box. I have not successfully created anything with it. My kids would love that I could, but I keep telling my son, like, if you want to learn Roblox Studio, you got to do it on your own. I just don't have time. I'll teach you Unity if you want Unity, but I can't teach myself Lua and teach you Lua. There's just not enough time in the day, bud. I'm sorry. But he's learned some things on it.
Okay, great. So it have been a great discussion with you. I think we have covered most of thing. And if you want to share anything from your side that I have missed and that is important for our game development community for a beginner, so you can explain on behalf of you.
Yeah, I mean, just to reiterate some of the things we already talked about, that when you're designing a game, keep it very small. Get what is the most exciting part of your game, build just that piece and get people playing it. Because if your most fun part of your game, once people play it, isn't fun, then you got to rethink it and you got to start over. But whatever you can do to get something published as fast as possible, that's going to be the best thing to avoid burnout. And also potentially can get you revenue. So make it small, publish small, get it done.
Okay, great. And my last question, that which kind of tutorial we can expect on your YouTube channel?
Oh man, I keep thinking, because I love doing the tutorials, but it's like the biggest thing I've been waiting for is like people to ask for things, and there hasn't been a lot. So I've done VR tutorials, but VR, people aren't looking for it that much. I wasn't getting a lot of VR hits. I was doing Playmaker tutorials. I wasn't getting a lot of hits from Playmaker tutorials because that's a very small group of new developers.
I can understand.
When I started doing C# stuff, I started getting lots of hits. I started doing tutorials on Ready Player Me with C#, and I was getting lots of hits because Ready Player Me avatars have just become really popular, and people are always looking for tutorials for it. I have so many tutorials for Ready Player Me. It got me.
And personally, I have learned a lot from you on the Ready Player Me, because when I started working on the Ready Player Me, I was searching around it, and basic stuff I was able to do, but how to generate Ready Player Me avatar on multiplayer, that was difficult. So I just figure out on your tutorials. So that was really great.
I started thinking many times of either changing the way that my channel works or creating a separate channel to make it more entertaining, to where it's more of, I'm not necessarily teaching you all the things, but I'm just creating something in a fun way that's fun to watch. Like a lot of the big game dev channels out there, they're not tutorial channels. They're something that anybody could watch and they would find fun and exciting. And then maybe those folks also have side channels where they do tutorials. I've thought about doing that. I've also thought about doing some shorts, like using YouTube shorts and like trying to find the very basic elements of something and talking about it in a minute. Cause I thought people might like that bite size. Because people don't want to sit through an hour-long tutorial, even if they need it all. A lot of people do like it because they can pause and they can work on something and they can come back. So I thought
Yeah.
about doing a series of shorts basically on Unity's XR and just breaking down every single component. Like, this is the grab component, and talk about it for, 30 seconds to a minute. I don't know. It's one of those things. It's just like with your games. Where do I go with my games? I need someone to give feedback. It's so hard to get feedback. Anytime I get a comment, I'm like, yeah, but a lot of times the comments are like, thanks. And I'm like, all right, people are watching. They took the time to comment. What do I do now? But a lot of times it's just
And
finding what is that new thing that people don't know how to do, and they're looking. Then I have to learn to do it too.
yeah, and when I started my YouTube channel, so I used to create tutorials on Hindi language. Basically, Indian language is mother language is Hindi. So at that time, I was not getting that much view, but my country people were loving it, who were learning the game development. But I was not getting the view, so I started making tutorials. I'll improve my English and started tutorials on English. So it is a better view than the my Hindi language. But yeah, but it is not very much view. It does not give us enough money to survive. So I think in Unity there is a less audience. Due to this, we suffer a lot, and it is required same amount of time as well as your hard work to create the tutorials.
Yeah, yeah. And it's sometimes it's hard building tutorials, which you might know, where you spend a lot of time on a tutorial. You're not really making any money from the video. I mean, mine gets ad revenue now, but it is so small. I mean, I think my channel is smaller than yours actually. And I mean, I'll get like $9 a month or something from ad revenue, which I mean that's cool. It's passive income. But then I'll have people every now and then they'll complain about, it's like, you said the word so often, or that background noise. I'm like, I'm so sorry for you. Let me refund the $0 you put into watching this tutorial. And it was like one of those tutorials too, where like nobody else on the internet had done yet. And I'm like, I'm sorry, man, that I'm the only place you could come to learn this, but this was my free time for your help. But I
Yeah,
usually just
it
click
is
the ignore button and block.
totally relatable because means people expect that everything should be 100% fine, and sometimes they ask me to just remove the advertisement. They complain that there is lots of ads. So uh, this is the understanding of people, and that's great. But I think we are creating the YouTube tutorials, so it's helping a lot of people. So I think that is the great opportunity, and it is a great work that anyhow we are helping the people.
Plus, it's teaching us. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've been doing a tutorial and I'll learn something new. Like, oh, hey, I didn't know you could do that. Great, we're gonna do that. Then I just find something new while I'm teaching something. And people are like, you need to spend more time planning. I'm like, if I planned my tutorials, I would never release them. Like, I did it first. Like, I had a lot of stuff planned. I would test it all out on my own first before I hit record. And then I would go through into my editing software and I'd clean everything up and trim it. I don't have time for that anymore. I use OBS and the F8 key. My F8 key pauses. So if I need to stop and think, I press F8. I think, might click on some stuff to sort it out, and then I press F8 and I'm back in it again. I do no editing anymore. It's just from scratch. I pause. If I have something really bad, like I forgot to pause and I have to turn around and yell at my kids or something, I'll go back afterwards and edit it. But I try to make sure that the only way I'm getting videos out is if I don't have to edit after I'm done recording. And so I have to make sure that I'm on the ball with that pause button and I know what I'm talking about. Otherwise, it's a really long tutorial.
Okay, so if someone is thinking to start YouTube channel to teaching Unity game development, will you suggest they?
I mean, if you enjoy it, because you're not going to be making a lot of money teaching people to steal your job. That's basically what we're doing, right? We're teaching people to take our jobs. And there's this old phrase where people who can do, and then people who can't teach. And that's true in a lot of ways. Like if someone was really good at their job, they would be getting paid a lot of money at their job. They wouldn't be, teaching high school kids how to do their job.
Exactly.
And, one of my skills I've been blessed with is one of the reasons I got into tutorials was I saw a lot of tutorials that I didn't quite understand. And so I had to spend extra time in it. And I'm like, you know what? I think I could teach the same concept, but I could teach it in half the time. And that's basically how I got into tutorials. Was I thought I had something new that other people would appreciate. Just quicker, faster, or even in fact, sometimes new knowledge. But for someone getting started in YouTube tutorials, if it's fun for you, that would be the only reason I would say to do it. Because
it is going for the money, so I think you will not survive for longer.
Yeah, if you're looking to become a YouTuber by doing Unity videos, then don't make them tutorials. Do what's his name, Danny, who's disappeared off the face of the planet. But this developer, Danny, he's got Danny channels, DANI. He's really geared towards the younger viewer, just really crazy game development videos. But he wouldn't sit there and teach code. They were basically devlogs, really silly devlogs about how he created something really silly, and he got millions of views. So that's the way to go. If you want to do Unity videos, be a YouTuber, and you want to make money from it, don't do tutorials. Just make entertaining devlogs.
Exactly. It is the best advice if someone is going to start for the Unity YouTube channel.
Have you ever looked on YouTube on how to do something and the top result has been your own YouTube video? There's been times I'm like, how do I do this? And I typed it in. I'm like, oh, this is exactly what I need. And I click on it and it's my face. I'm like, oh, okay. Apparently I used to know how to do this. And then I'll sit there and I'll watch myself teach me how to do it again. It's been really crazy whenever that happens.
It's a funny story. Yeah. So it was a great discussion regarding the Unity as well as on the YouTube. So I think it is a lot learning for viewers. So I will say thank you to you. It's a pleasure to talking to you, and I really learned a lot from you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much, Philip.
If anyone wants to check out my YouTube channel, just youtube.com/Philip Herlitz, PhilipHerlitz.
Yeah. And if someone want to join this podcast, means in next broadcast you want to come, so you can just message me on LinkedIn as well as on my email ID. So basically I just this is my second podcast. Basically I'm first in my first postcard someone asked me the question. In second podcast I'm asking the question. So I'm not very much expert on it, but I'm trying to learn. So this is way it is going, because sometimes I listen the podcast and that is lots of learning, but I search in the Unity, we did not get anything, means we have not much more this kind of stuff. So I think that we can plan so that people can take the benefit by learning from it. So
Indeed.
That's it.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.